Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin here with the Illinois Channel. And many of the issues that impact Illinois don't always originate just in Illinois. And we have an example here where, with the aging of the baby boomers and the need to take care of elderly parents, increasingly something that many families across the country are facing, we wanted to have take a look at some new development in a bill that is being offered by Senator Dick Durbin, and we are going to be joined by a contributor of ours, Daniel Grimes from Washington, D.C. Daniel, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel.
Hey Terry, how's it going?
Great, great. And now, one of the issues that impacts, and there's some legislation out there and has been for some time, the Older Americans Act. You've taken a bit of a look at that. Let's talk a little bit about first, what is that and approximately how old is that legislation?
Yeah, so the Older Americans Act, which originally was established in 1965, it was made to take care of the and the act established the Office of, let me make sure I get this right, the Administration on Aging, which actually helps communities and older citizens around the country make sure that they don't actually have to go to nursing homes. And so it helps them in their actual homes, it helps them in their communities. It just makes sure that older Americans can continue to give to their communities around this country and not have to retire to a nursing home. And what it also does is it helps people who are taking care of the elderly. And so there are an estimated 73 million Americans that are going to be 65 years or older by the year 2030. And so this act is really important because it helps those people who are taking care of their elderly relatives.
And I know myself there are some friends and many people run into this where their parent either is suffering from Alzheimer or they're just getting very elderly and they can't take care of themselves anymore. And with the cost of some of the nursing home care, we recently had a story about this with AARP of Illinois. Uh, it can just be cost prohibitive of sending some of our elderly parents to a nursing home. So increasingly, people are doing a lot of this caregiving at home. And I understand you recently had an interview, or I know you had an interview recently with Senator Durbin that you shared with us. Why don't we take a look at that now, and then we'll come out after that and we can discuss that.
Senator Durbin, thank you so much for talking to me today. You introduced a piece of legislation last week talking about Family Caregiver Act. Can you tell me a little bit about what that bill does?
Turns out that 1 out of 10 people in this country is a caregiver. Some people help a little bit, some people help a lot. Young people, older people, disabled people. And so what I'm trying to do is to be sensitive to the fact that that percentage is going to double in the next 10 years. More and more people, older, more challenges. So what we're trying to do is make sure the Older Americans Act has provisions in it that gives people a helping hand if they're caregivers. The training that they need, a respite so that they can have a couple of weeks off, and maybe even in some cases some financial assistance to continue giving care.
So your bill increases funding to about $360 million. There's an estimated 73 million people who are going to be age 65 years or older by 2030. Do you think that's enough funding for them?
Probably not, but it's beginning. Many families take care of loved ones and don't expect any compensation or care beyond just the fact that they love them and want to help them. But some need a helping hand. And if we can give better quality of life, a better place to live, and maybe even a less costly experience in caregiving, we ought to reach for that goal.
And lastly, what do you think the chances are of it passing here in the Senate?
Well, the Older Americans Act, except for reauthorization, we hope to offer this as an amendment.
Great, thank you so much, Senator.
Very interesting, Daniel, and we appreciate Senator Durbin talking to you about that. So, yeah, 72 million people, but $360 million. If you break that down, that's not going to go very far. Although it's around twice as much as we currently have, or more, right?
Yeah, so we currently have around $160 million for families who are helping their care, their elderly relatives, whether it be a parent or a grandparent. And so Senator Durbin and Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia introduced this bill that would increase that funding to 360 million. Now, as you saw in the interview, I got a chance to ask Senator Durbin, is that enough? And he admitted that no, we have to, it's a kind of a starting point, and that he hopes that that can get passed with this reauthorization. But there are, as he noted, the 1 out of 10 people are currently helping a relative, and that's expected to double in the next 10 years. And so, I really hope that we can find more funding in this 360 million that Senator Durbin has proposed, because as you noted, the rising cost of healthcare and senior living in this country, and more people are just getting older.
I know people are often against spending more money, and that's fine. We need to find ways to cut government spending in certain areas, but I think it might be argued that in some cases, if we are having people at home as compared to nursing home care, we would be saving the government money, because what happens after people run out of their own funds is Medicaid, which is health care for the indigent, then starts picking up the tab, and that's one of the biggest programs, one of the biggest expenses of the Medicaid program in the federal budget.
Well, and as we saw with President Trump's recent budget, he has some proposed budget cuts for Medicare and Medicaid. And so if that budget were to get passed through Congress with, just this kind of measly increase to $360 million for caregivers, that might just further hurt these families that are in need.
Did you discuss anything about like how the money might be appropriated to what families? I guess the point is, when we say 72 million people with 360 million in funding, should his amendment pass, that's not a lot to go around, but then not everyone is going to be applying for it, because some people have the wherewithal to be taking care of their family members at home and won't need to be applying for those funds.
Yeah, so we actually didn't discuss that, but the Older Americans Act of 1965, the original bill, actually does. And so it's supposed to be for families that are in need, for anyone that's 65 years or older, that doesn't have the economic resources available to them. And Senator Durbin in the video did say not everyone is going to be using these funds. It's if families out there, they have it, they're taking care of relative, and they don't need extra funds, that's great. But this money is really for those who are taking on that relative, who are taking on their parent or grandparent, because that's just the right thing to do, even though they may not have the money to really to be able to actually effectively take care of that aging relative.
Before we close out, Daniel, we hope to do some more reporting with you, but let's give a little bit of a shout out to great Illinois University, Northwestern, and you're participating in the Medill, you're a graduate student, I should say, the Medill School of Journalism, so you're there for the Washington semester. How long will you be in DC?
So I'm going to be here in Washington working with the Illinois channel through June. So June 15th is my last day here in Washington. So I'm excited to kind of be a contributor for the Illinois channel here in Washington.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and we look forward to bringing some more stories for our viewers from Washington, D.C. Perhaps we can get some more interviews with some of our congressional delegations. There's a lot of stories up that are very important. That's one of the key things that we want to be able to do, is connect the dots between Washington and the rest of the state here, and those issues, I should say, that impact us. So we appreciate you working with us, and we'll look forward to you joining us in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks for the opportunity, Terry.
Thank you.